Hello Jaka,
Hi.
how are you today?
Not too bad.
What do you think about StartUP conference next? About the organization and the
Well,
people?
I always like coming to Bulgaria. I think that every time I'm here, there's a bit bigger community around startups. There's a bit less naivety about startups, and that's also good. So for me, I'm just able to find much more good people to talk about entrepreneurships and about tech startups and about companies and building how to build them. It's cool.
Okay, really cool. You are helping people to start their startup, and basically you're helping them with their brand and experience.
Well, that's a very small part actually. About
Smart, yeah.
Right? So we essentially believe that if you want to help a founder to build a meaningful and sustainable and growing company, it's about making sure that you take the ideas, that you uncover what their full potential is in terms of what are the functional aspects that the market can take on board and can use at a given point in time, or at a given industry or vertical or something like that. But there's also another aspect of it, which is an emotional aspect, is how to remove the barriers between the customer, the user, which has to embrace something new, and that's always a problem. And unless you have in a way, an essence to the company, a purpose, and that is reflected in the way you think about it as a brand, that in essence just creates slightly more obstacles for the users to actually go through. So when we think about brands, we don't think about brands as in the brands of the 80s and big Coca-Cola brands and stuff like that. We think about what are the emotional specifics and value specifics of a team or of a product or of a startup, and we just try to, in a way, help the founders to discover their own little language, discover their little elements of that brand, and place it between the product and the customer, and that sometimes creates something amazing.
Okay, but how customers react to all startups and basically all their the new ideas that startup gives to their new clients, and also
In what way do you think?
in the way that you mentioned emotional barriers, and that when people make the startup, they make a lot of mistakes. So how to, let's say, how to make the right choice and then to make the right decision?
Well, I think for a startup, it's one of the most important things that you have to take on board, that you have to accept, is the fact that you will be wrong most of the time, right?
Yeah.
Not only will you be wrong in the sense that you will, as the saying goes, create something nobody wants, because typically that never exactly happens all the way. But you could be wrong in a way you think people will start to learn about how to use your product, or how they will respond when something goes wrong. So how will they respond to your bugs, to their, to your flaws in the system? Because you're a new company. You're here to essentially solve some sort of a problem that hasn't been solved before or hasn't been solved in this particular way. And you try to build something that's going to functionally, solve this thing. But because you know that there is going to be inefficiencies, there's going to be sort of, bugs, errors, something like that, unless there is also a sort of almost like a reflective talk about that you realize, that this is potentially a problem for the customer, and you communicate about it through your brand, through your values. So we had an example about Moo and about the way they've created this character, the little robot, who is someone that just essentially takes all the blame and guilt onto himself and is slightly depressive because of it, and yes, I know, again, something went wrong. But the fact was that by creating this little robot, the startup, in essence, admitted that they're not perfect. So they've taken that out of the promise, and they've still created something that's fun and entertaining. And in a way, what that helps their users to do, it helps to put the bug in context. So it's not something that is just, again something happened because I had 10 seconds to finish this process. suddenly it was, oh, hang on, you know, I'm having a relationship with this company. So yes, something small went wrong, but that's okay because the company realizes it, and they try to alleviate my pain, and they try to do it in a funny way, and in a way that I potentially like. So this is where the spunk starts to happen.
So the feedback is something really important about the startups and their clients. Okay, now what is the best, let's say, best advice that you can give to all Bulgarians that think to start something, but they're afraid because of they know what to start or how to start, or they don't have the perfect team?
There isn't one single advice that you can do, that you can put to the founders when it comes to either pushing them into doing startups or telling them not to do startups. The truth is, and we hear that time and time again, doing startups is difficult. It's heavy. It's how should I call it? It's not rewarding most of the time, and only few very tenacious, disciplined people and teams make it. Right?
Yeah.
So to try to just push everybody into doing it, it would be, I think, not only counterproductive, but it would also create a wrong type of community of people that are just frustrated because things don't happen. There's also one other fact about the startups, and that is that as you're trying to create something meaningful, the only way to create something meaningful is to actually know about the problems that people or companies have in a certain space. And learning about those problems, that's tough. That takes time. I would say that even today, probably the best startup founders that we work with, for example, in London, are people that have spent a lot of times in a certain vertical. And yes, they were part of big corporations even and stuff like that. So it's not like they decided they want to be founders and then they've iterated on the startups and they hit the jackpot. That's not the point. The point is to find meaning through understanding the space where you want to move in and through understanding what are the biggest pain points that can be solved now. So all these things put together, it's not a simple equation. It has lots of elements. So I would say the following: if you believe that there is an entrepreneur in you, entrepreneur in the sense that you enjoy taking certain risks and you want to create in a way not a following, but you're comfortable with leading people towards a certain vision, regardless of the fact that you know that it's going to take you a couple iterations probably to go anywhere, then by all means go and start this process as early as possible, right? And if you think you have many startups in you, yes, go. And go now and go where the pain points is the biggest, which means it doesn't matter if you're from Bulgaria or from Slovenia or from any other country, find that space where the problem is the greatest. So, go to UK, go to the States, go to China, go to Africa if you're solving, problems of whatever Africa has problems now, and that's that, right? But on the other side, if you are slightly more conservative in a way, right, and you're trying to know really well what you're trying to solve, then it's perfectly fine to learn about those problems by working in that particular space in, organizations that already exist, or to try to learn about them, right? So think of it as the difference between directly going into startups and slightly waiting, as in what type of a learning would you like to go through? Would you like to go through a learning where you will test many things many times and you will fail many times, and that's okay with you? Or would you like to go through a learning where you embrace the knowledge first so you can pinpoint what you want to solve slightly better and then create something?
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.